Hey folks, Q&A time again. And today's question is from Hannah Brannigan. How you doing, Hannah? Previous client of mine, wonderful animal trainer and just all around fabulous human. Hannah asks, how do you keep all of your pictures from looking the same and boring, but still have consistency? Where's the line? Or along the same theme, how do you reuse images without being boring and repetitive? I assume you're talking about social media. And I thought I would answer this question, Hannah, while we look through some Instagram accounts together. So I'm gonna share my screen in just a moment. I think first I wanna say, first of all, great question. Lots of people have this question. I'm on a roll right now with questions that seem to be like practically universal with the people that I work with. What is consistent? What should be consistent are your brand qualities. How that can show up visually can look different ways depending on your brand. So I'm gonna show you some Instagram pages. I just went and pulled a bunch open that I think are good, that are in my Instagram world that I've discovered recently. There's a million others in my feed as well, in my collection that I love, but these are just ones that I sort of randomly chose. Rowan and Sage, I don't remember how I came across Sarah Corvettes' work. She's a clinical herbalist and plant witch. So here's an example of someone who has a lot of consistency in terms of photographic style and subject matter. So almost everything in her page is about plants. Evokes this kind of magical world of plants. Love the rose petals on the ground here. Plants through her eyes. There's a sense that either she's a really terrific photographer or she has hired or somehow worked or collaborated with a fantastic photographer. There's a sense of cohesion in terms of the photographic quality as well as the subject matter. And it's interspersed with images of her doing her work, images of her product and images of the outdoors. Really magical, really visually consistent. Okay, so I think that's one way to approach it, where you create a kind of seamless world. Nothing outside of this visual world. There's nothing outside of this visual world. It's contained. You step through a portal, you're in this magical world. It's seamless, right? And that can be a really powerful thing to do depending on your brand. So on the other hand, let's go to IDEO. So IDEO is a design company. They do design education. They do all kinds of things. Their feed does not look like a seamless world. There's all kinds of things happening in their feed. There's all different kinds of typography that you see. There's all different kinds of color. I mean, there's some themes, like you generally see a lot of bright colors and crisp design, but there's all kinds of stuff going on here. And that's because, including these like candid shots of people in action, yet the whole feed, even though there isn't that sense of a seamless world, the feed feels very alive, very full of ideas, very full of inspiration and action. So that's the thing that's consistent here. So brand consistency is important in the sense that you are creating a kind of world, a kind of culture that people step into. And that consistency can be communicated through very narrow visual parameters like Rowan and Sage, where it's a very visual, self-contained world that you enter. Or you can be like IDEO, where the consistency is in the sense of this dynamic, like constant stream of interesting ideas where there's a lot of diversity, but you still get the sense that what this company is about ideas. And, like every one of these posts has, also a written component that kind of draws together this world of ideas as well. So consistency is important. What it is that's consistent can change from person to person. So this is Marsha. She's also a previous student of mine. And her feed was fabulous before and during and after she worked with me. She's got a very fun and playful and vibrant sensibility. And she does a lot of experimenting on her feed. So this is a really experimental feed. You go through passages like this where you can see she's experimenting with this kind of design for her posts. And then other passages where there might be another kind of design, and there might be found and reposted things. She does a lot of reposting of all kinds of things. Obviously, you know, this feels like a consistent world. You get a sense that her brand is lively, and you get a sense that it's sexy and fun and nonconformist and creative, and that there's just a lot of pushing of boundaries in a really, really fun and sensual way, which is like perfect for her work, which is all about coaching and education around sex positivity and all kinds of things. So, so Marsha, nice job. I always love your feed. It's so fun. So again, you know, there's a whole range in terms of visual parameters, like how limited do you want them to be? There's a real range available. And again, what's consistent is the values that are being expressed. So for IDEO, it's about ideas and a diversity of ideas and a lot of different minds coming together. For Marsha, it's about sensuality and play and vibrancy and lushness and sexiness. For Rowan and Sage, it's about going really deep into this kind of tunnel world of these beautiful plants and plant magic, and just evoking a really specific kind of space, right? Brown kids, these guys, so they do a lot of stuff around minimalism and home design and lifestyle kind of stuff, very sustainable, also very creative. They clearly love designing this feed, or I don't know if they love it. I feel when I look at it like they love it. I don't know them personally. But these are people who are in love with beautiful design. So they've got this gorgeous neutral color palette, and even photos that seem like they would be really vibrant, like fruits are usually vibrant colors, are kind of filtered and toned down to fit in with this really beautiful neutral palette, which is a lot about light, a lot about natural materials, a lot about their adorable relationship, the choices that they're making. So I think this is a really gorgeous example, kind of like Rowan and Sage, of a feed that is a self-contained, very tightly designed visual world. And when I say tightly designed, I don't mean uptight, like within these kind of narrow visual choices about color palette and some things about composition that might even just be intuitive on their part, so much is possible. They can communicate so much within this kind of, you know, there's infinity within the narrow visual choices, right? So this is one that I just love to come and look at. It's calming to me. And I think, you know, what I do know, I don't follow them super closely, but what I have followed of them, their relationship to design and simplicity and minimalism is a very kind of calming space. And it's also a fun and playful space, as you can see. They're pretty fun and playful. Then we have Jen McCabe, also someone I know through my work, who's worked with me. She actually took this image in my studio. These are little gears that I had sitting in a box. But Jen also has created a visual world inside of which there is a lot of flexibility. So when you look at a passage like this, you see there's this natural color palette that goes from luminous blues to kind of golds and browns. But there's a lot of diversity within it. Some of it are these like kind of larger zoomed out landscapes. Some is really close in, little scraps of paper, rocks. Sometimes you can't tell if something's from her journal or from a photograph. And then she lets it be loose. So she's not so tightly curating the space that she can't also throw in something found, something reposted, like this one here. She's got some silly selfies in here. So again, there's a room to play and there's room to maneuver. This is social media, right? Like you get to let the personal mix with the professional. You get to mix the more carefully curated design choices with the thing you throw in just for fun. People expect that. You don't have to worry about it that much. And I think the sites, the feeds that I love the most, there is this sense that at some point the creative process that goes into finding that kind of visual language that seems to hold the brand's values, when that visual process starts to become really alive in you, then you get excited more and more to generate images within that visual world. What I've always loved about Jen's feed is that, you know, there are passages of 3 or 6 or 9 squares that feel very gorgeously curated, where it's clear that she's taken images from her journal, from her sketchbooks and her paintings, images from photography, found images, and she's really thinking about this world that she's creating. And other times it sort of falls apart and she's throwing in stuff from more spontaneous stuff from her life. And there's that sense that this is a really active creative process for her. So I just love that. And that a lot of these are kind of ambiguous. And in her work, she's talking a lot about relationships and how people relate to each other. And, you know, it's deep, and her posts are really deep. They go into really deep and sometimes challenging and beautiful thoughts and ideas around relationships. And I love how those things that have to do with human relationships end up relating to how these forms in their abstract ways relate to each other. And that's not necessarily a super conscious thing for her. She's just created this visual world that is ambiguous and complicated, just like relationships are, and full of natural forces. And so it's really fun, I think. So I guess my message to you about this is there's a range. There's a range from the really closely curated, really specific visual world, which can be so evocative and so powerful. You know, every photo here supports her products. Every photo here supports a feeling that we're going to have about her brand and her products. That's really powerful. So there's a range from this to the ones that are much more eclectic visually. But what's consistent is the values that are coming across. So what are the values that are most important to you, Hannah? And, you know, what is going to speak to the people who come to your work the most? And I'm going to guess, given that, you know, the clients that you're trying to reach are totally in love with their canine friends, that, you know, play and joy and the things that we love so much about those relationships get to be what's consistent in your feed. And my question to you is, what becomes a playful and joyful way for you to keep that a fresh practice for you? Because that's what's going to keep you doing it consistently. That's what's going to come across to people. So that was a big giant mouthful. I will stop the share now. And I would love to hear, Hannah, from you in the comments below, what you thought about this, if this was helpful, if you have follow-up questions, and if anyone else watching this has follow-up questions and thoughts, I would love to hear. All right, see you later. Bye-bye.